Do you guys remember this video of mine? About 7 months ago, I had a client come in who'd had her hair kind of ruined, if I'm going to be honest, at another salon. And she had previously had all of these highlights in her hair and wanted to continue highlights, but the stylist decided to give her a bleach out instead because that was easier and faster. And then it didn't work out clearly, and she tried to highlight and root tap on top of it. Anyways, if you want to see this video, it is on my channel. Go check it out, because what I'm doing today is I'm doing part 2. So 7 months ago, she came in, we did the color correction and did as much as we could to help her hair in the time being. But as you can see, her hair is super, super fried. So we didn't put any bleach to it. But today is the day that we're doing her foiling appointment, and I wanted to film that and show you guys so you can keep up with what happened with this transformational journey. So here is just a refresher on what her hair looked like 7 months ago before we did our first appointment. If you haven't caught that video yet, just go back and check it, and I'll link it in the top here, and then come back to this video and we can continue on with the rest of the story. So this is what she came in with today. Over the last few months, we've been doing a toner appointment to tone her down and add some low lights and kind of blend in her roots coming in because of how damaged her hair was. We didn't want to be putting any bleach towards it until it's had some time. She's done some treatments, and we've been giving it a little bit of care and some self-love. So this is her overall color. Now the lights in my salon at nighttime do make things look a little bit warmer, but we've got like this chocolatey brown color, and her roots are several inches long, and you can see as I'm pulling it out here how it goes from a darker to a lighter brown. She likes this honey brown, and she wants the color that's on the ends to kind of come up into a balayage. So what we decided to do was start with a K18 treatment, of course, because that's going to help her hair as much as anything ever is going to. And even though, side note, we do get a little tiny bit of breakage today, as is expected on some of those ends because they've been so over-processed before, the K18 really does help her hair, and it looks incredible in the end result. So I've got 2 formulations today. I have a dark bowl for the root areas, and I have a lighter bowl for those mids to ends areas. And I use different color bowls, so it's a lot more obvious for me to tell what formula is in what one. So for the dark bowl, we do want to lift her quite a bit, so we're going to use our Blonde Me and our 20 volume, and that's going to go on her roots. And I'm going to mix it to a bit of a Greek yogurt consistency. This right here is almost perfect. I added a little tiny bit more developer, but I do like a Greek yogurt consistency with this one. And then with my lighter bowl, I use just the Blonde Me clay because it is a super slow and low lift, and I'm using it with a 7 volume. So it's just gonna bump her level a little bit and kind of remove some old toner, just brighten her up a tiny bit. I don't really want to get a lot of lift. And I mixed it to a way thinner consistency because I don't want it to have a ton of power. Remember, thicker is quicker. So, I mean, we all like that saying in the hair industry, and there's an obvious reason why. So I've sectioned her into 3 sections today. We have her natural parting, and on either side we have those 2 sections and then the back. I'm going to get started with the back section now, and I'm going to show you basically my full application today of how I'm applying this balayage, because I know a lot of people struggle with creating a balayage that is at the same time dimensional and still gets those pops of blonde without making it too stripy looking. So this is going to be pretty good for some of those kind of newer stylists who are looking to find a nice balance between something that has quite a bit of the natural left in there so that it's a lower maintenance balayage, but still has a pop of blonde without making things look too chunky and piecey and stripy. So on the back, I am starting with the nape of the neck, and I'm taking things in angular sections back. I am back combing, and then I am weaving big chunks. And what this is going to do is the big chunks are going to give me some like ribbons of color, but back combing and blending up with a power painter brush is going to give me the softness that I need so I don't have a crazy hard root. So I am putting the green formula on first, and that's because if I do get it on any areas that are the darker root areas, then it's not going to do any damage. But if you start with the black formula first and you accidentally get it on any of those lighter brown areas, it is the more powerful lightener. And if you were to start with the green one first, at least it's acting as a barrier on top of those brown areas. I hope that that's all making sense, but I essentially want to put on the weaker formula first onto those weak areas that are at high risk of melting off, so that if I do accidentally overlap a little bit with my more powerful formula, it's on top of the weaker formula instead of the powerful one going on first. So yeah, I am using my Power Painter brushes to give a nice blend as well as back combing, and this is going to give her that really piecey look. Now, I am trying to make sure that I am leaving out quite a bit of her natural color, but I don't want things to look like I just skipped areas. That's not what we're going for. So I take this pretty large piece here, and I'm doing quite a lot of back combing. And again, the back combing, if you're new to hairdressing, it does push away all those little shorter hairs. And once you recomb them down, they will create this diffused soft look. So that's why I like to still back comb or do air touch with these kinds of looks, because otherwise you're gonna see where the lightener just stops in the hair, no matter how much you try to blend just by hand. If you don't have some sort of pushback with any of those little shorter hairs, you're still gonna be able to see a big, strong demarcation line. That's not what we want here. So what I tend to do with more of these dimensional balayages is I like to use a lot of diagonal back sectioning, because it creates this flow of the hair where it kind of falls nicely. And so I do these two angular pieces that go upwards towards the face, and then I connect them in the middle with a triangular piece in the center as well. And what that allows us to do is to get more of the blonding on the sides and less in the very center back, because a lot of new stylists might find that every time they do their balayaging that maybe they're over foiling, or when they do their balayage method that maybe they're getting too much blonde in the back center, when really they want that waterfall appearance where the hair is blonder around the face and dips down around towards the back, and that's where it's going to be the least blonde. But this is kind of how I prevent that, is that I do the foils more towards the side to connect towards the ear area, and then in the middle, when I connect them, I leave more hair out of the foil by quite a bit. Versus these side pieces, I'm making them a little bit blonder and a little bit more bold, and that middle piece that connects them is going to be a little bit softer, a slightly smaller weave, and it's going to be less hair that's going into the foil than you would even think so. But it still creates this nice connect between them, and it doesn't look like just a bunch of random chunks just bleached into the hair. And that's the hard thing about patterning out a foiling pattern for someone, is if you're doing something that's supposed to be dimensional and not have a ton of blonding in the back, because the back is such a big space of the head, it can just very quickly become overwhelming for a lot of stylists. So I feel like these two corners where you tilt them up and then the big connector in the middle is a nice way to create areas that have that soft balayaging, and anything that's left out in between them is the low lights, and it's all more cohesive than just choosing random pieces or doing the back into two separate chunks and doing quarters. When I do quarters, I do that for my standard foiling practice when I'm trying to get someone as blonde as possible. When I'm doing a foliage balayage method where I want someone to be dimensional and soft, I definitely do the back as one big section, and I kind of like bricklay it in a way. So yeah. Now some of you may be wondering why we're even lightening her hair at all if it is so damaged. And that's because she wants it lightened. She is used to being blonde, and she was basically forced by me to go into the more brunette zones. And even though she loves brunette, she's just craving to have a little bit more blonde in her hair. And so I want to give her as close as she can to what she actually wants, while still maintaining most of her hair health. And that's why you can see that I'm actually leaving out the ends here, because the ends, as you can see, are really, really compromised. It's from years of overfoiling and then the double bleach service that happened in the other salon. And, since then, I've just been very careful about these ends, and I've been giving them treatments and doing toners and stuff on her to prevent any kind of damage from lifting. But what we are going to do later today is we are going to lift them, but I don't even trust the gentle formula that I have in the green bowl right now to be on those ends. So right now I'm just applying to the roots and the mids to get them to like a nice like level 7.5, 8. We want like a golden bright color. We don't want a level 9 lift. We're not expecting that. We're not going to get that. But we do want to brighten that kind of mid area up a little bit and relift those roots. Those ends will get incorporated into the lightener a little bit later in a much safer way. But again, you know, this is one of those services that is going to have a little bit of breakage. And when your client knows that and they still consent to it and they're like, okay, I understand, like we're gonna need a little bit of a trim on those ends because some of those ends are looking pretty crispy right now. Then that's fine. I feel like that's the nature of hair, and a lot of hairdressers are very scared of addressing things like potential breakage when their client is insisting on going lighter. But I think that that's just a conversation we all need to start having more frequently and stop pretending like breakage doesn't exist. It exists, it happens, and I think that if we have a more realistic expectation of how hair services can go, especially considering the expectation of what hairdressers are supposed to be able to do these days, I think that it's going to relax everybody a lot on their future hair services and doing future hair services. Because if we're realistic with our clients about what their hair can accomplish and cannot accomplish in a healthy way per service, then I think that we're all going to take a big step forward into understanding each other a little bit more in the hair industry. Because I feel like lately there's kind of a divide between hairdressers and clients based on, honestly, so many things. And I feel like if hairdressers were a little bit more open with things like when breakage happens and we're a little bit more honest that, hey, yeah, like this was a beautiful service and we did have to give her a trim because there was some breakage, it'll set a more realistic expectation for when people see videos like this and then they get to go to their appointment and maybe have a little bit of expectation that, hey, I might get some breakage, but I've seen a video like this before where she did have some and it wasn't torrential. It wasn't the worst thing in the world. So yeah, this is what we're doing here. And as you can see, she has so many different colors in her hair, and those all have to be brought to like one set color for me to do the toner. And when there's so many different colors in the hair, this is where it actually gets pretty advanced and pretty difficult to deal with. And you guys are going to see when I open up these foils later how patchy and weird the colors are in the hair. So can't wait for you to see that. So as I'm getting towards this top connector piece, I'm taking a really wide chunk and I'm doing actually quite a small weave in comparison to what I've been doing everywhere else in the back of the head. As you can see, this is more like a medium weave, but this is small in comparison to what I've been doing everywhere else because I want to maintain that really soft teardrop effect. So it's just a little touch of foils at the back because this is where the hair opens up and can show a bunch of weird lines if you have a bunch of big chunky foils there. And so yeah, this is just one of my little helpful tips and tricks is put a finer weave foil at the crown and that center area where everything connects. That's what you'll see with this side. I'm only going to show you the one side because I do the other side exactly the same, so I'm not going to waste your guys' time. But yeah, when you come up towards the apex of the head and all the areas are converging together, do a smaller weave and it will be a more softer veil of little tiny foils that kind of just fan out around everything rather than leaving big chunks of blonde. Now I am doing a money piece because she asked me for one, and I would probably do this little foil a little bit differently. I did more of a slice here, but I think in the future I would just do a weave. It did look really good though, but I think in the future I would probably just do a weave instead. But I started with a slice here, and then this piece I did a slice as well, and this one I would still remain as a slice, but that first little chunk, it's just kind of an awkwardly placed little one, and I think I would weave that just for a little bit of softness to kind of veil in front of these bigger money pieces when she puts her hair up. But overall it did have a good result. I think just for my perfectionism I'd like to change that in the future. So if you ever see that little tiny, almost a sideburn chunk right there, unless someone's asked for like the strongest money piece in the world, I'd probably weave that one and then do slices just behind them. And I am maintaining the slice factor right around the entire hairline. So everything that I do on the one side, I'm going to carbon copy on the other side so that we have a very symmetrical look. This is a very important thing to do, especially if you're going to do a dimensional look like this. Your pieces are going to be pretty bold and you want them to be the same on either side. So if you have a hard time remembering what you did on each side, you're going to do each foil as a very specific thing and you want it to lay a specific way, I would recommend going left, right, left, right, left, right, and then that way you don't have to try to remember how you did each of your foils and then replicate that on the other side. Versus what I'm doing right now is I am just taking down mental notes about every single foil that I do, and I try to recreate it on the other side. So now that I've done the money piece, what I'm doing is I'm doing a foil that is just weaved just behind it to kind of soften that transition between the money piece and the regular foils. Because if you leave out a low light, it's just going to look like a big chunk of dark behind that money piece. And I've done that a couple of times trying to trust the process. It didn't end up working out. I've always had to put in an extra foil in there after the service was already done because it just left this weird disconnect. So if you're struggling with a disconnect between your money piece and the rest of your highlights, I always like to do a foil in between rather than leave out a space. For the rest of this application, I'm going to be going on a diagonal forward, and this is going to create a nice natural fall for these highlights, and they're not going to look stripy and piecey. They're going to look soft but still bold and blonde at the same time. It's a very fine balance that you find between these things. I'm still taking pretty large sections that I'm leaving out in between, but when it comes to a balayage effect, I always want to make sure that the front area has more blonding in it than the back does. So whatever's being left out in between these foils is not going to be as big of a piece that's left out that's in the back. We're having a slightly higher ratio of blonding in the front than we are with the back. So I'm going to speed up the video a little bit here so that you guys can get an idea of the pattern that I'm doing. I'm taking big sections and sectioning out the skinniest top part, back combing and doing a thick weave, and they are all diagonal forward all the way until I get to the apex of the head, where again I'm going to do a much smaller weave, and it's going to be still back combed. I'm going to feather that one up quite a bit for that transitionary connection spot. And this is just so that you guys can see my pattern, but essentially it's all kind of the same all the way up to that point. So if you do want to fast forward a little bit or just watch the application, that's why I have sped this part up, because there doesn't seem to be much more I can say about my foiling other than I'm not doing any bumping up with my developer. So if you had that question of, are you bumping up the developer and the power of your bleach as you go, that's not happening here. I'm keeping it the same power, and I felt like if I need to rinse out the back before I rinse out the sides, that's totally fine. I'll do that. I do not want to risk using something that's too powerful on her hair today. I want to go as gentle as possible and blend her hair out as much as possible. So if I end up having to do some rinsed areas first, that's totally fine. And I didn't, which is good, but once I'm done my foiling, I'll show you what I end up doing next to deal with those ends, because those ends are still quite brassy and dark, and we still want to give them that little bit of lightness. So you can see even when the foils are falling forward, then you can see how the hair is naturally going to fall with its blonde pieces. So this is giving a good result already. And here are what the foils look like on the inside as soon as I've done applying. This is what the back looks like. So it's lifted up pretty good. It's like a level 7 right now, and it's starting to match those ends, but there's still some blotchy black pieces in there. There's some blotchy orange, and it's just kind of a little bit of a mess, so it needs a little bit more time. Now here's a shot of me checking them when they're looking pretty well ready, and yes, I am doing the big bad. I am not wearing gloves, as I should be, but I don't care. There's nothing else I can say about that. Is I don't care. I'm going to get contact dermatitis, and I'm going to get what I deserve, but don't do what I did here today. Wear gloves, please. Protect your hands. Your hands are beautiful. You only get one set, so don't do what I do. And what I'm doing here is I am opening up my foils, and I am using my hands to scrape the lightener on my bare skin down towards the ends of the hair, and to kind of coat up those little fragile little ends, because I want to use the old lightener that's in the bowl and in the foils. I'm not mixing a new batch here. The old lightener that's been in the foils has been there for like 45 minutes at this point, and it has next to no power in it. It's just gonna breathe a little bit of brightness into those ends, and even that is too much for some of these ends. That's how compromised her hair was. But you don't want to put fresh lightener with full power on those ends. This is very old clouded lightener in the bowl. And I'm only doing that if there's not quite enough saturation from what's scraped down from the rest of the foil that goes in to coat those ends. Because what we do not want to have is darker ends than what we have in the mids and the roots. And that's what's happening right now, as you can see while I'm applying here, is that those ends look kind of shadowy and they're just like half a level to a level darker than what's in the mids and the roots. And so that's going to be really apparent if you don't sort that out right here and right now. And I'd rather do that here and now than to do that in the sink, where things can get a little messy and areas with bleach still on them can touch areas that you don't want to have bleached. And then that's where you just get a whole bunch of like leopard spots, tiger stripes all over the place. So that's why I'm doing that here in the chair instead of in the sink. And you can see how much the hair actually is a different color all over the place. You can see all of these little patches of dark color here and there. And this is going to help not only brighten the ends, but also even up the rest of the hair. And I'm going to do that all over the head. After that's been done, I'm going to show you what that looks like when all of the hair is lifted to the level that I want. Way more even, way better. And even though some of those ends are screaming at me, I'm so sorry, at least the whole thing is going to look a whole lot more cohesive and balanced, because this hair needs that. After we washed her out and detangled her, this is what we have before we're going to start with our toning. As you can see, those little ribbons of blonde are still looking pretty bold, but also pretty soft at the same time. So I'm very happy with my application. And that amount of foils, even though it wasn't a ton of foils, still did the job of brightening her up. Now, this is my toner formula today. I am so sorry, I used a discontinued line. I am using TBH mixed with Vibrance. And my formula today was a 9-04, a 9-06, and an 8-0 with a 7-55. And so I'm just going to tell you what that's all about here. A 9-04 is a 9-natural beige. And in the TBH line, I find the beige is still quite cool. So it's a nice mix of warm and cool. And what you want to do on uneven canvases like this, where they have all these different colors, you have kind of like a low light color, you have a highlight color, you have natural roots, you have an old drop root, and you have just, it's kind of a big mess. You want to have a mix of warms and cools in that lightener, not the lightener, in the toner formula, because the warms will fill the hair and the cools will control the tone. So the 04 has a little bit of that cool, but not a lot. And the 06 has some chocolate, which has some fill and some balancers in it. The 8-0 is, again, more natural. And the natural is pretty warm, the Schwarzkopf, but it's not too warm. And the 7-55 I love because it gives a lot of shine to hair. It fills the hair, it has that champagne-y gold undertone, and it's one of my favorite colors in the entire Schwarzkopf line. And I've mixed this all together today with the lotion developer because I want it to stick where I'm putting it. Then after that, I am putting on my root tap formula, and I didn't take a picture of it, but it is Schwarzkopf Vibrance 5-0 and 5-4 with a 6-volume lotion. Now this is where I did make my mistake. I should have put the root tap on before I put on the rest. And usually the way that I do my root tap is I put on the light formula first because it acts as a diluter and it prevents things from going too patchy or too dark. Or maybe I should have just formulated a little bit darker, I think, because my root tap didn't really show up too much. It did a little tiny bit of blending, but honestly, as you guys are going to see with my 2 stars in a wish practice that I put into this video later, my root tap is the problem here. That I would have liked to fix. So I think next time I would formulate a bit of a 4-13 into this formula, or I'd leave it on for a little bit longer or something. Either way, I want it to be a little bit more pronounced so it can help with the blending a little bit more. But, you know, we got what we got and we still like the end result. So this was the original before, just as a quick reminder of what we had to deal with in this year for this client's hair. This is today's before, and it was a big improvement on the original before, but you know, we still have a long way to go. And here is the after result. So here I'm gonna be, you know, finger combing it out, and you're gonna get to see the full result, but I am very happy with this. Now remember that my studio lighting is a little bit on the warmer side at night, so this is a slightly warmer result than what really came out, but my first star is my toner formula really balanced everything well. A really big mix of the warm colors because she wants a very caramelly, honey, warm, golden, brown, and blonde mixture. And it really balanced everything out well. I'm very happy with that. And the application I'm very proud of today. It gives her dimension, blonding, but it also doesn't give her a harsh root because she doesn't want to come in every 3 months for a full head of foils. She wants to come in once, twice a year. So I'm very happy with that. Look at how dimensional and ribbony it looks. I'm very happy with this. But again, my wish would be the root shadow should have gone on first and a cooler formulation, or one or the other. As you can see where those foils start and end a little bit, and I would just like a little bit more blur with that. But overall, I am pretty happy with this result, and so is the client. She's got a little bit more of that blonding in there that she wants to see without having something that kind of washes her out. We don't want to have a level 9 because that's just going to wash out her complexion. But I think that's something that's like a level 7.5, 8 with a caramelly honey tone. Just suits her so well and works really well with those warm brown undertones that are also in there. And we want to work with what she has and not put her hair at too much risk. So giving her a little bit of balayaging and not bleaching the whole head again is what we're going to do and what we're going to stick with. So it's time for you guys to sound off in the comments. What did you think about this video? Did you learn anything? Please let me know what your 2 stars and a wish would be for this video if you have any feedback for me. And as always, please remember to like and subscribe because it really goes a long way for this channel. And if you want to see more free hair education, then let me know what you want to see in the comments. And if I ever end up booking an appointment that has something to do with some of these things that you want to see, then I'll be sure to get consent to film it and I'll put it up on the YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much. Have a great weekend. Love ya.